Drive through a town 6 months after a supercenter opens, and you can feel the rhythm change. It starts with receipts. Local grocers see double-digit drops the first quarter, meat, milk, cereal bleeding to an aisle that pins price to the floor. Hardware stores lose the Saturday crowd to a fluorescent tool wall that's cheap enough to make brand loyalty wobble. Apparel boutiques watch basics walk out their door before noon, then don't come back, because socks and school tees now live next to groceries and oil changes. Business mortality doesn't look like a TV collapse. It looks like one bad season, then two. A grocer misses Easter because the ad didn't land. A second-generation pharmacist sees refills drift to the counter by aisle 7, where the copay rings in alongside school supplies. 12 to 24 months after the grand opening, the attrition shows up in paper. Going out of business signs, silent auctions for shelving, and a landlord answering calls about subdividing a space that doesn't quite fit anymore. The ripple isn't only retail. Service businesses tied to that foot traffic feel the draft. The diner that lived on 11:30 a.m. coffee from the hardware crowd loses its early lunch. The print shop that ran circulars for 3 independents loses 2 clients and cuts a shift. A bookkeeper who handled payroll for a family grocer watches the hours disappear, then picks up part-time at the supercenter, a different cadence entirely. Labor shifts with it. Walmart brings jobs, but not the same jobs. Part-time becomes the norm, benefit thresholds managed by software, schedules published late, hours flexing with traffic. A full-time union grocery job once anchored a mortgage. A patchwork of 28 hours across evenings and weekends anchors a budget in pencil. Just-in-time scheduling saves labor minutes. It costs predictability at home. Childcare gets complicated. Second jobs collide with closing shift. Paychecks swing month to month. Meanwhile, the tax base trades one shape for another. Local officials celebrated abatements and TIFs when the site was graded. Sales tax bumps arrive with the grand opening, and the ribbon cutting feels like a win. A year later, downtown's assessed values dip as vacancies spread. The property tax receipts that used to fund the library came from many parcels. Now, more of the bet rides on a single box at the edge of town and a ring of out-parcels selling drive-through meal. The consumer paradox sits in the cart. The family pushing it saves real money. Back to school is less painful. Groceries stretch to the weekend. Gas and time saved by consolidating errands matters when pay is volatile. People aren't making a mistake. They're making a rational choice inside a system that rewards one-stop trips and low base prices. The choice trains demand. Once you trust the rollback, brand loyalty starts to slip. A familiar cereal goes on the list. But the house brand rides home when the gap is $1 and the rent's due. End caps do quiet work too. Loss leaders at eye level, rotating deals on detergent, snacks, batteries, nudge basket size up. Seasonal resets teach speed. Halloween in September, Christmas in October, patio sets when snow is still on the curb. The aisles choreograph a calendar that moves faster than the town square ever did. Disposable cycles feel normal when new feels cheap and last season feels like clutter. The old circuit of stores, grocer, hardware, pharmacy, shoe, shrinks to one parking lot, one receipt, one routine. On Main Street, the social fabric thins in ways spreadsheets miss. The pharmacist who knew your meds by heart doesn't see you anymore. The hardware owner who loaned a tool set for a weekend project can't keep the doors open. The bulletin board where summer jobs and bake sales found eyes goes quiet. Events try to fill the gap. First Fridays, farmers markets, pop-up fairs, but their energy fights weekday emptiness. It's hard to build habit without daily needs pulling you through the block. Not every place folds. Some pivot. Co-ops form to keep a grocer alive with member dues and sweat equity. Niche shops carve out a lane, repair over replace, specialty over commodity. A coffee shop adds a roaster and ships online. A butcher goes whole animal and sells classes. These wins are real. They're also narrow and labor-heavy, built on community buy-in that takes time to assemble and can't be mass-produced. Meanwhile, the ghost box problem lurks on the horizon. When Walmart leapfrogs to a bigger site or trims a cluster, the shell it leaves behind is hard to reuse. Deep floor plates, limited windows, parking sized for a crowd that isn't coming. Some towns rezone and cut the box into a school, a church, a call center. Many can't. The building sits, a reminder of a bet that moved on. The vacancy carries a psychic cost, a daily view of how fragile the new center can be. The legal guardrails barely twitch. Under the consumer welfare standard, Antitrust looks at price and output. Prices are down, selections broad. The standard declares victory. Predatory pricing claims run into EDLP framed as scale and efficiency, not malice. The very logic that made the cart cheaper makes the case harder to argue. Towns learn the limits of policy after the fact, when the bargaining power already lives in one address. Still, ask families at the register and many will tell you the truth. They feel the savings. They also feel the lost time with a manager who knew their name, the longer drive when a grocery closes, the scramble when hours shift. The effect isn't a villain monologue. It's a system expressing itself through everyday choices. The blue box didn't invent scarcity. It organized it, priced it, and made it convenient. This is how a habit becomes an ecosystem, and how an ecosystem makes a town bend. Training demand. How America learned to buy. Price took the steering wheel first. EDLP trained people to stop waiting for circulars and start trusting the base tag. A shopper who used to clip coupons began to skip the hunt. The signal was simple and sticky. The shelf would be fair tomorrow, not just today. Brand loyalty softened under that drumbeat. If the house brand matched the national on taste enough times, the gap in price did the persuading. End caps became lessons, not just displays. A rotating set of loss leaders taught timing, detergent this week, paper towels the next, and nudged baskets to grow without feeling like a splurge. The psychology was quiet. You came for cereal, you left with batteries because the brand you recognized was stacked high at eye level at a number that felt like a win. That win reinforced trust. Trust shortened the time you spent comparing. Shorter comparisons trained speed. The loop, trigger, action, reward, repeat next week. Pack sizes did the rest. Value packs looked responsible, more per unit, fewer trips, better planning. The cart changed shape as families learned to buy in bulk, even without a membership. Once you store 12 paper towel rolls in a closet, you've normalized a rhythm. Stock up now, think about it later. Inventory moved from store backrooms into homes. That shift locked in return trips when the cadence hit empty at the same time across thousands of houses. Seasonal resets rewired the calendar. Halloween in September wasn't decoration creep, it was habit training. Seeing costumes early meant planning early, meant adding candy to a September grocery run, meant one less errand in October. The aisle taught you to act now because later would be a different set. By mid-October, Christmas moved in. Lights, wrapping, themed bakeware, small add-ons that felt like preparation, not impulse. Disposable cycles felt normal, when displays made next month feel present. Meanwhile, the one-stop trip became a family ritual. Saturday morning wasn't a circuit of 5 stops. It was a coordinated push through a predictable path. Produce, pantry, pharmacy, pet, oil change if you could swing it. The store layout trained routes. End caps caught you between departments. Power aisles framed seasons. Even detours were engineered. A clinic visit meant a pass by home goods. A tire rotation meant 30 minutes wandering near electronics. Time in the building turned into sales per hour. Families call it efficiency. The model calls it conditioning. Inside that routine, Walmart used small rules to shape behavior. Rollback flags drew eyes downward, away from premium shelves. Private label faced the lane like a dare. Here's the same thing cheaper. When enough house items delivered good enough, the basket tipped. A family that used to buy 4 national brands now bought 2, then 1. The dollars saved reinforced the shift. The trust migrated from brands to the building. Apps and receipts added a digital loop. Savings catcher era promises of price matching on the back end and e-receipts that logged purchases taught shoppers that the system was watching for value, so you didn't have to. Curbside and BOPIS layered convenience onto trust. Once you built a saved list in the app, reordering took minutes. Substitutions trained tolerance. If a different brand showed up at the same price and it worked, the next cart included it by default. The friction to try, something new fell to a tap. Meanwhile, kids learned the aisle language. Back-to-school kits bundled brands and basics in one grab. Sports seasons meant a predictable swing through snacks and coolers. Holidays became checklists the store wrote for you. Over time, the town square's calendar faded next to the store's version. Tax refund season meant big-ticket electronics. First warm weekend meant grills and fertilizer. Cold snap meant space heaters and socks. The retail clock ran fast and loud. There was a social script, too. Returning from a Walmart run with a full trunk felt like competence. You stretched a budget, got ahead on supplies, did it in one drive. For families juggling variable hours, that mattered. The store made good choices easy and fast. It also made slow choices harder. Browsing downtown took time and extra gas. Comparing butchers or hardware advice demanded attention. The aisle offered certainty at a glance. That's how routine beats ritual. What nobody saw consciously was the training effect on value itself. Cheap stopped sounding like compromise and started sounding like smart. Repairs lost ground to replacements when a new toaster cost less than a fix. Fashion cycles sped up when a pair of jeans dropped under $20. Storage bins multiplied because seasonal decor multiplied. The house became a satellite warehouse for a retail system designed to move. Meanwhile, brands learned to market to this cadence. Ship-ready shippers, seasonal packaging, bundle SKUs that matched end caps. Suppliers that didn't adapt watched facings shrink. The lesson flowed one way, aligned to Walmart's tempo, and you earn space in a national habit. Miss it, and you become a specialty buy on a weekend your customer no longer has. In the end, demand wasn't discovered. It was taught through tags that didn't bounce, displays that told you what week it was, and a building that turned shopping into choreography. Once learned, it stuck. Labor, unions, and the scheduling clock. Inside the bright aisles, the tightest controls landed on time, who worked when, how long, and at what cost. The company's posture toward unions set the tone early. Organizing wasn't a conversation, it was a fire alarm. When a butcher shop in Texas voted to unionize, the fresh meat counters disappeared as positions were converted and departments restructured. The message traveled through breakrooms faster than any memo. Unions didn't get a seat at the table, they got the table removed. HR playbooks paired that stance with a strategy that treated hours like inventory. Full-time meant benefits and predictability. Part-time meant flexibility in the spreadsheet and volatility in life. New hires heard promises of internal mobility. The ladder of department lead to assistant manager to salaried manager. Some climbed it. Many found bottlenecks where a handful of coveted slots sat behind performance metrics tied to things they couldn't fully control. Traffic flow, shrink, mystery shops, and comp sales that dipped when the town's paycheck cycles shifted. The schedule lived in an app. Algorithms listened to last year's sales by hour, weather forecasts, school calendars, and local events, then spat out labor needs in 15-minute blocks. Just-in-time scheduling looked elegant from a distance. Match payroll to demand, keep the lines short, cut idle time. From the kitchen table, it meant shifts finalized late, split days that chewed through childcare, and a call at dawn asking if you could come in 2 hours early. When sales ran soft, hours vanished midweek. When they ran hot, a text begged associates to stay. The clock flexed, paychecks wobbled. Associates learned to reverse engineer the machine. A seasoned cashier knew Saturday's wave by the parking lot count and the tenor of morning huddles. A stalker timed breaks between trucks to dodge write-ups for missed pallets. The best workers hit task times the system expected, zone the aisle in 16 minutes, pull the top 20 fast movers before 9, push the seasonal end cap live by lunch. Shave 30 seconds here and there, and you kept your rating high enough to ask for better hours. Miss a week during a kid's flu, and the rating dipped. The shift slid later, and a second job got harder to balance. Wage headlines complicated the picture. In some years, base pay rose under pressure from local minimum wage laws, from public scrutiny, from competitors raising their floors. The PR said progress. On the floor, higher base rates often came with tighter hours to keep payroll ratios in line. $1 more per hour didn't offset the lost fifth shift. Overtime existed mostly as a rumor outside holiday peaks. Benefits thresholds sat like cliffs. 32 hours meant health care, so schedules hovered at 28 for many. A cushion built into labor models to avoid accidental eligibility. Anti-union training bled into everyday routines. New hire videos framed the open-door policy as the answer to grievances. Managers kept union vulnerability assessments that tracked morale signals, high turnover, missed breaks, whisper networks. When organizing flickered, corporate labor teams landed quietly. Meetings framed as listening sessions, resets that moved a problem manager out, a surprise store improvement project to mop up the worst frustrations. The tactics weren't theatrical. They were procedural, as disciplined as inventory turns. The psychological lever: isolate momentum before it becomes identity. Peak seasons pushed people to their edges. Black Friday week wasn't a day. It was a month-long sprint of overnight mods, security briefings, and 12-hour shifts that still managed to dodge overtime caps through clever staggering. January clawed back payroll with cut hours just as credit card bills hit home. Summer reset weekends stacked heavy freight with skeleton crews and exacting planogram. Burnout didn't announce itself. It showed up as a no-call on a Sunday. A great associate disappearing to a warehouse job with steadier hours. A department lead bowing out after a holiday run. Meanwhile, stores leaned into ownership language. Huddles celebrated wins, fast lines, clean in stocks, a community event photo posted to the breakroom board. Associates were told their ideas mattered. Sometimes they did. A revised cap map that cut steps, a redesigned bin label that saved seconds. But when an idea bumped into the national playbook, the playbook won. The sense of agency ran up against the reality of standardized everything. Pricing from the center, assortments from analytics, labor from an algorithm. Scheduling's hidden costs lived outside the store. Parents swapped childcare with neighbors whose schedules also shifted weekly. Community college students dropped a class after the third sudden midweek close. A second job at a call center fizzled when shifts overlapped too often. Transport hiccups, one missed bus, a car that wouldn't turn over, cascaded into attendance points that took months to erase. The system assumed frictionless lives. People aren't frictionless. Yet for many, the job still penciled out better than the alternatives nearby. The store offered predictable policies, a path that sometimes did pay off, and a manager or two who quietly blocked out steady shifts for reliable people. Healthcare at 32 hours changed a household budget. A quarterly bonus for hitting shrink targets bought school shoes. And for workers who understood the rhythm and could bend their life to it, the machine rewarded speed and discipline with steadier ground. The irony sat there in fluorescent light. A retailer that promised certainty to shoppers created uncertainty for many of its own. The same precision that kept shelves full squeezed minutes from human days. Unions tried to promise a counterweight. The company's structure pushed back with 1,000 small levers, benefit cliffs, anti-organizing playbooks, algorithmic shifts that made collective action a hard bet. The clock kept time. People tried to keep up. Law's blind spot. Antitrust, zoning, and subsidies. While associates watched the scheduling clock, another clock ticked in courtrooms and council chambers. The question wasn't moral, it was legal. Under the consumer welfare standard, antitrust asked one thing: are prices lower and output higher for consumers? If yes, scale looked like success. Walmart's EDLP fit that frame perfectly. Cheaper carts, broad assortments, more stores. On paper, the case closed itself. Predatory pricing claims surfaced when independence collapsed after price wars. But in hearings, Walmart's lawyers didn't argue charity, they argued efficiency. Cross-docking, retail link, vendor-managed inventory, OTIF discipline. These weren't cudgels, they said they were systems that cut cost. When a grocer accused the company of undercutting below cost, the defense pointed to economies of scale. Better freight, better turns, better shrink, and a base price that didn't need loss leader theatric. Courts, bound to consumer welfare metrics, saw lower shelf tags and shrugged. Harm to competitors didn't equal harm to competition. Meanwhile, mergers in other industries drew heat. Walmart's growth arrived one permit at a time. Zoning boards faced a different calculus: land use, traffic, tax base, and public sentiment. Meetings filled with two kinds of testimony. On one side, small business owners warning of Main Street death. On the other, residents and officials talking jobs, sales tax, and convenience. Permits often hinged on proffers: turn lanes, stormwater basins, signage limits, and the promise that growth would follow the new stoplight. Local subsidies sweetened deals. Abatements trimmed property taxes for years. TIF districts let new sales taxes pay for the infrastructure that drew shoppers to the box. Land sold cheap because the council wanted a headline. The bidding wars didn't look like giveaways at first. They looked like bets. Capture regional spending, keep shoppers from driving to the next county, anchor other tenants on out parcel. Ribbon cuttings came with speeches about keeping dollars local, even as the profits traveled to a headquarters far away. Zoning rewrote maps. Supercenter footprints demanded wide aprons, big setbacks, and arterials widened to handle weekend surges. Once built, those roads favored large format retail. A bookstore with a narrow frontage on Main Street couldn't absorb the traffic or match the visibility. Site plans replicated across counties: a blue box, a ring of pads, a pond, a big lot. The pattern made every next box cheaper to approve because it looked like the last one, and the last one worked. Here, what nobody priced into the vote: the exit. When a store relocated to a bigger site or a cluster thinned, the ghost box problem landed in a code book that wasn't written for it. Deep floor plates, limited windows, specialized slabs, and parking fields too large for typical reuse. Zoning didn't have a fast path to carve the shell into something else. Covenants layered another trap. Some deeds carried restrictions that barred grocery competitors from moving in. The box that once promised life to a corridor could sit dark for years, a monument to a deal that didn't imagine the second act. Sunk cost psychology kicks in. Leaders hesitate to rewrite rules because admitting the miss hurts more than fixing it. Antitrust never touched that. It wasn't built to. Consumer welfare doesn't measure the cost of a dead anchor on municipal finances, the loss of a walking district's daytime foot traffic, or the way labor volatility ripples through childcare networks. It measures prices and output. Prices went down, output went up. Case dismissed. Towns adapted within those blinders. Some wrote big-box ordinances that capped square footage, demanded breakup-ready designs, or required demolition bonds so an empty shell wouldn't linger. Others negotiated clawbacks on subsidies, missed job targets, and the tax break evaporates. A few forced mixed-use pads and sidewalks, trying to stitch the bypass back to downtown. But across thousands of places, momentum favored the template. A council facing a budget hole chose the near-term sales tax, even if the long-term math was murky. When communities pushed back hard, the playbook adjusted. Smaller footprints, neighborhood markets, softer facades, sustainability pledges, Project Gigaton on the environmental side, community grants on the civic side showed up in presentations. Critics called it PR, operations teams called it incremental improvement. The legal backdrop didn't change. Consumer welfare still judged by the cart, not the county ledger. Meanwhile, subsidies reshaped competition. A rival grocer without abatements looked slow and overpriced when a subsidized box opened with a grand aisle of perishables. Complaints to state attorneys general met the same wall. It's legal to offer incentives. It's legal to accept them. The market was working. To fix, it would require rewriting the test itself, expanding antitrust beyond the cart to include structure, power, and place. That debate lived in journals and hearings while on the ground. Forklifts set new end caps and trucks kept time. In the end, law didn't miss Walmart. It measured the wrong thing for this kind of story. By the time that became clear, the roadwork was poured, the tax district carved, and the town's habit trained to turn right at the light. Supercenters, groceries, and store as infrastructure. Groceries changed the cadence. Dry goods built habit, but perishables locked it. The day a general merchandise box added a full grocery, the trip went from optional to weekly. Milk and meat don't wait for flyers. A family that might have drifted between stores now had a reason to show up every 7 days, rain or shine. That frequency turned the building from retail into infrastructure. You didn't visit, you relied on it. Reliance feels safe until the box moved. Groceries also rewired margin math. Low markups at the perimeter pulled traffic past higher margin center aisles. A cart that started with cheap bananas rolled by small appliances, teas, and toys. The path wasn't accidental. Power aisles framed seasons. Inline end caps carried the next best offer, not the absolute best, nudging the basket without breaking trust. Even the bakery did work beyond bread. Warm smells near entry points signaled freshness. A queue that made the produce look better and the store feel local despite the square footage. Pharmacies sealed the routine. Refill cycles synced with grocery cycles. Monthly meds meant monthly exposure to every aisle. Clinics added a new rhythm. A sore throat on Tuesday turned into a flu test and a pickup for soup, tissues, and a space heater. Money services pulled in people outside the traditional banking system. Check cashing, money orders, prepaid cards, traffic that used to split across multiple storefronts now fed one set of doors. Under one roof, the store became a substitute for missing civic capacity. Private label quietly climbed the ladder in the new format.